Good evening, everyone. You're watching Bharat Voice. I'm Ritika Acharya, and today we have a special guest with us who's live from Athens with us. So now everyone knows that India and Greece's ties are very, very old, as long as 2000 years old. And we've had cultural ties, we've had historical ties, we've had amazing trade ties, and what we've done is that this time around, we've tried to extend those ties. We've tried to strengthen our relationship and that people to people connect. Recently, our guest who's with us today, he received a letter of friendship from the government of India and from our Prime Minister Modi. We have with us Paul Antonopoulos, and he's live from Athens. He's the bureau chief from Greek City Times, and he's also a senior journalist. Paul, welcome to Bharat Voice.
Thank you for such a generous and warm welcome. I couldn't have done it better myself, even if I tried. So thank you so much for that. And I also wanted to extend my thanks for the letter that I received from the Prime Minister of India on the behalf of the Indian people. It was definitely one of the biggest honors of my life, and it's something that I'll definitely hold very, very close to me. Especially I was never wasn't expecting it and wasn't wanting or wanting it either. So it was a huge honor.
But since you say it was a huge honor, we want to coax a little bit. I want to understand a little bit more. How did you feel? And you always liked India. You've written about India. I've read your articles, and you've drawn parallels between the Mughals and the Ottomans and stuff like that. Talk to us about it. How did you feel? Have you visited India? You want to come soon?
This is quite interesting, actually. I have not been to India yet. I'm more than desperate to go. And over the course of our conversation now, we'll talk more deeply about this because, unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, direct flights that were planned between Athens and New Delhi were unfortunately delayed. And we're still waiting for this to occur. But I'm sure it'll happen this year, and we'll definitely see a flourish of exchanges happening once this direct air route opens up.
Okay. Paul, let me get on to a few more serious questions there because, you often talk about trade and defense as well. You've written about it. I want to understand from you that recently our foreign minister, S. Jaishankar, also called upon your foreign minister, Mr. Dendiasfai, if I know his name correctly. He, called upon him and said that, we should soon strengthen our ties and we should meet immediately as soon as possible. What do you have to say about what could be the possible future of India and Greece ties? And could we have better? Also, the MPs of Greece have, in the past have also asked for strengthening defense ties between India and Greece. So do you think that could happen?
Oh, there's absolutely no doubt that this will happen. One thing that I must stress, though, is that although Greeks and Indians, we like to pronounce our ancient civilizational ties, however, the harsh and unfortunate reality is that our modern states, with Greece achieving its independence from the Ottoman Empire in the 1820s and India, of course, from the British Empire in 1947, unfortunately, our modern relations has actually been at an extremely low level, primitive, and frankly, not good enough, unfortunately. However, up until Dr. Jaishankar's visit to Athens last June, no Greek or Indian foreign minister had actually met with each other in their respective countries, or one of the countries, in 18 years, nearly 2 decades. So this is how neglected this relationship was up until very, very recently, the last 2 years. So given this, under the current Greek foreign minister, Nikos Dendias, which you pronounced it perfectly, relations are really beginning to flourish now. Although Dr. Jaishankar visited Athens in June 2021, the initial visit was actually organized for November 2020, but that was delayed, unfortunately, because of COVID-19. So in essence, because Greek-Indian ties have been neglected for decades, a lot of the foundations are still being worked on or still being established. The good news is, though, that this is moving in a very, very rapid way. Opening direct flights between Greece and India will serve to propel economic relations, facilitate travel between business people, tourists, and in this way we have cross-cultural exchanges and whatnot. More importantly, from the economic sense, is that Greece serves as a gateway for Eastern countries, which of course India is, into the European Union. And that is important for India because, as we know, the European Union has a common market. So India can bring its products, its rising manufacturing and industry, which is already being exported globally, but now India can enter the European Union market through Greece. What I do want to say, if I can continue onto the military aspect,
Go ahead.
which I would, thank you, is perhaps it's more important, when we speak about the military ties. This is something that is already occurring and will be intensifying over the years. So unfortunately, over the last few years, our military ties have been virtually non-existent. Following Dr. Jay Shankar's visit to Athens, this is definitely propelling. We've already had a few joint military exercises with each other.
It's interesting. Paul, it's interesting you say that because India, on the other hand, is also trying to become self-sufficient in terms of our defense policies and, making our own missiles and stuff. And now having relations with the Philippines and giving them the BrahMos as well. We recently signed a deal with them. So it's interesting because most of our the defense equipment that we buy, it's mostly either from Israel, from UK and stuff. If those ties do strengthen and with Greece, could it be path-breaking?
It certainly would be. So this is important because although our close ties extend over 2,000 years, as we always like to emphasize, the primacy of our modern relationship should be on security matters because we do face a collective threat from Pakistan and Turkey. So there's no it's not something we can ignore, unfortunately. So both of our countries, we've got our we unfortunately did not have the smoothest beginning to our modern states for various reasons, which we don't need to go into. And because of this, we've neglected intelligence exchanges that we should have, joint military exercises and whatnot. More importantly, Pakistan and Turkey, they're both countries that are revisionist and they're attempting to alter the regional order. India and Greece, I would argue, is rooted in the wisdom of our ancestors. So what I would say in that is that uniting intelligence, our intelligence apparatus and our military efforts into being able to counter this collective threat. Because I would argue Pakistan and Turkey are motivated by a very medieval ideology of conquering, something that has absolutely no place in the 21st century. Unfortunately, this is what we have to deal with. I would say in the 21st century, we like to think that we are enlightened, but this enlightenment is only thanks to the wisdom passed down over the centuries, rooted in our ancient ancestors. So in this way, the West likes to claim that the civilizational root that they've got a civilizational root with the ancient Greeks. However, this isn't exactly the truth, as the Greeks are a Eurasian people that straddle two continents. So in this way, Greeks like to see themselves as being on the borderland of the so-called Western, enlightened West, as they like to pronounce themselves, and the so-called chaotic East, which is a little bit of a it's a little bit of a lazy term to use to say that the East is more dangerous or whatnot. But the reality is that between Greece and India, there's Turkey, there's Pakistan, and there's many war zones.
Yeah. Paul, it's interesting you mentioned that. I'm going to come to the Pakistan and Turkey bit a little later. Let's talk about trade a little bit. Our trade with Greece is approximately accounts for about $1 billion. And what we export to Greece is mainly organic chemicals, aluminium, iron, steel, and plastics, and etc. So do you think that, since we're talking about strengthening our defense relationship as well, what can be done to improve trade and exports between India and Greece?
The most exciting prospect, perhaps, is not just entirely just between Greece and India, but also the countries in between Greece and India, and being able to incorporate them into multilateral agreements. So in this way, we can draw in countries, perhaps say the United Arab Emirates.
Hmm.
even Egypt with the Suez Canal. So
Hmm.
from Western India, at least, from the ports of Western India, they're directly facing already the Arab world and directly
Hmm.
into Europe. So in this way,
Hmm.
we're hoping that there can be closer ties between India, Iran, Armenia, and the European Union as a trade corridor that
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
bypasses Pakistan,
Hmm.
Pakistan, and the Chinese-controlled port of Gwadar in Pakistan. In another route, it's hoped to connect India with Greece via the United Arab Emirates. So, and another route is, as I said, through Egypt. India and Greece cannot build such extensive trade relations without involving other countries, and this is
Hmm.
only for
Hmm.
this is only a positive thing, of course, as it
Yeah,
brings greater stability. Yeah, there's more
correct.
incentive for us to avoid revisionism in the region as well.
Hmm.
So I would
Hmm.
say the most exciting aspect is the development of such trade corridors because it incorporates the different countries and keeps us
Hmm. Hmm.
collected.
Hmm. Hmm. All right, Paul, talk to us about, there's a similar problem between India and Greece again. So the thing is that in India, we have this illegal migration from Bangladeshi Rohingyas, and India has, always tried to solve this problem, and we're working on it, and we try to make our policies around it, and we've tried to stop them as much as we can. Greece has a similar problem of migration, and it's become a huge problem over the years. Talk to us about it, and also, do you think that also there are reports that there are always this happens to increase the internal tensions in the country and internal conflict in the country? Do you think that the demographics of your country, of Greece, could change after the immigration increases and more migrants come into and flood into the country?
I'm not so much worried about a demographic change of such, but the security issues that come along with it. So I'll give you an example. The former Turkish Prime Minister of the early 1990s, his name was Turgut Özal, and
Hmm.
he openly said that Turkey does not need to invade Greece. We just need to flood them with millions of illegal immigrants and be
Hmm.
done with them.
Hmm.
In
Hmm.
this way,
Hmm.
he was effectively saying the Turkish military is not
Hmm.
involved. We can weaponize migration. The
Hmm.
issue with that is that many of the illegal migrants that enter Greece tend to be Turkophile immigrants.
Hmm.
This is what happened in 2015 onwards when the Turkish government just flooded Greece with hundreds of thousands of so-called Syrian refugees.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Of course, the Syrians were escaping war. However, what it turned out is that the majority of the illegal immigrants entering Greece were actually coming from Pakistan, Afghanistan, and other countries, overwhelmingly
Yes.
Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Yes. Yes.
And as you already highlighted, there is this ghettoization effect or non
Hmm.
safe areas, particularly in areas of central Athens.
Hmm. Hmm.
Unfortunately, many of the illegal immigrants from Pakistan are disproportionately represented in crime figures, particularly rape
Hmm.
scarily enough. So this has
Hmm.
undoubtedly changed the social fabric, at least of central Athens and other neighborhoods and cities
Hmm.
of the
Hmm.
country. Um, it also, because of the mass arrival of Pakistanis to Greece and their unfortunate tendency towards criminality, it has made Greeks to become more privy about the necessity of having closer relations with India and also of learning about the issues of Jammu and Kashmir. Because to
Hmm.
be truthful with you, Europeans are generally ignorant of the issues of Jammu and Kashmir,
Hmm.
unfortunately. So yeah, South Asia, truthfully, the region was seen as too much of a far-off region for Greeks
Hmm.
before
Hmm.
Pakistan escalated tensions with Cyprus and Greece, and
Hmm.
before the mass migration of Pakistanis to Greece.
Hmm.
It also directly links to Greece's relations with Turkey as well, because Turkey has a syncretic ideology of neo-Ottomanism and pan-Turkism, and in this way, Turkey attempts to reclaim lost territories by filling certain countries with a significant population that is sympathetic to their cause. So whether there'll be a demographic change, I'm not necessarily worried about that, but just having a strong minority that is extremely sympathetic to Turkey and one
Hmm.
that has many of them have been educated in madrasas in radical Islamic schools. And with the arrival of illegal Pakistanis to Greece, we've also seen illegal mosques existing, illegal madrasas, and things like this. For now, Greece has not suffered from the terrorism issues that the UK, Germany, France, Belgium, and other European countries have. However, there is always that potential. And if there is ever an escalation of violence with Turkey, one of the biggest security risks Greece faces is internal terrorism, particularly among Pakistanis.
Hmm. Hmm. Paul, it's interesting you mentioned that, and it's very right you mentioned about Pakistan, because when I was going through numbers, what I could find was a large number of migrants that do come to Greece. Many of them are from Pakistan and Bangladesh. So I was going to come to my next question, which is that if in case that happens, because radical Islam then turns out to be a big problem, because we've seen that in Denmark, we've seen that in Belgium, we've seen it in the recent times in France as well with many incidents. And I've lived in London, I've seen it, I've witnessed it there. But do you think that when that happens, and if that happens in Greece, how could that be handled?
It's quite interesting, because for now the Greek intelligence services have kept a lid on things, thankfully, and they are quite vigilant. And however, an emerging theme that we continually find is that many of these illegal immigrants have been proven to be either ISIS members or formerly ISIS members, or with Al Qaeda, having either fought in Syria or in Iraq. So I would imagine that the chances of terrorism at the moment is much lower than what it was in previous years, because ISIS has effectively been hammered, at least in Syria, by the Russians and the Americans. So in that case, I think the current situation is quite fine. But how the Greek state would respond if such an action would occur, it's only one could imagine. I'm not quite privy to such a thing, because it's unfortunately it's something that Greeks do not have to experience often. In fact, interestingly enough, the most common type of terrorism in Greece, particularly in previous decades, was from left-wing terrorism and not Islamic terrorism.
And since you mentioned left-wing terrorism, I was just going to come to my question about, your Prime Minister, Mitsotakis. I wanted to understand, could you tell us, because the Indian people would like to know, would like to learn a little bit more, how is the Prime Minister of Greece? Is he a popular leader? Because, he's often been seen criticizing Turkey as well, and saying that, I'll put sanctions against Turkey. And, those conversations take place. Though there's also mixed opinions about him, that a lot of people suffered when there was snowfall in Athens. But, it's a mixed bag. We'd like to learn from you. What sort of a leader is he?
It's quite interesting. So the current Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, he came into power in the middle of 2019, off the back of several years of Syriza rule. Now, Syriza was the ruling party, and is a coalition of left-wing parties. And during their short time in power, which they were able to slide into power during the peak of the Greek economic crisis. What occurred is that essentially the floodgates of the Greek border were opened. So they, under the previous Syriza government, this was when most of the migrants started to flood into Greece. Since the Mitsotakis government came into power in the middle of 2019, the immigration issue hasn't been completely dealt with, but there has been huge strides, and the numbers of illegal immigrants entering Greece every week or every month has significantly decreased. So on that part, he's gained quite a lot of popularity, especially amongst the people that live directly on the Turkish border, whether it be the land border or on one of the islands facing the Turkish mainland. Because obviously these were the areas most hardly hit by the migrants. So in that sense, there's a huge satisfaction that the numbers of illegal immigrants entering Greece is decreasing. However, there are other criticisms, and some of them are for domestic reasons, and I won't go necessarily into that, such as what happened with the recent snowstorm in Greece with the cutting of electricity, but more so because of some contradictions in foreign policy issues. Take, for example, only a few days ago, the Greek Minister for Migration visited Islamabad, met with PM Imran Khan, and effectively set up a method so that thousands of Pakistanis can legally come to Greece to work. And this was only 1 or 2 days ago this occurred, and this has received a huge backlash amongst the Greek public, who do not want any more Pakistani migrants coming to Greece. It's not necessarily that Greeks are against migrants, because I myself am the son of Greek migrants who moved to Australia, and my partner is Brazilian living in Greece too. So it's not necessarily that I'm against migration, obviously, but it's something that you have to be vigilant about. You have to know the type of people you're bringing in, where they were educated, what their ideologies are, where their allegiances are, and whatnot. Unfortunately, this Greek government has dealt with the migration issue, but is now allowing another avenue for Pakistani migrants to come and work in Greece. The issue that we have is that there are several loopholes that could be had from this. So under the current deal, a Pakistani worker can come to Greece for 9 months per year, and then return to Pakistan for 3 months before they come back to Greece to work for another 9 months the following year. However, there's absolutely no guarantees that after 9 months that individual will return to Pakistan for 3 months. In fact, who's to say that they might not decide to move on to France or to Germany or to another European Union country and try to take up their generous welfare offers. So in this way, the Mitsotakis government is dealing with migration, but there's a lot of weaknesses in other parts that are angering Greeks. If we had to compare it to how the previous government dealt with the migration issue with the current one, there's definitely an improvement. But as I've just highlighted, at least from the public perception and opinion, that there was a catastrophic mistake made with the minister's visit to Islamabad.
Paul, our thoughts seem to be aligning in a very interesting way, because you're all coming to these points, which are my next questions. I was going to ask you about the meeting of Mitrachi with Imran Khan and what went on there, because a lot of Indians were, very, very upset about that. Because also there was a recent incident that happened in Athens, I suppose, where there were Pakistanis who were, shouting the slogans of Kashmir there in Greece, and that obviously upsets us a lot. How do you think that the confusion here, the complexity here about Kashmir and Pakistan and Greece, and therefore India establishing its relations with Greece, how would you handle it? How could Greece handle that?
I've got a very positive outlook. So although I completely understand why Indians may have felt a little disappointed with the events that happened 1 or 2 days ago, it certainly does not affect the pathway of Greek and Indian relations that they're on. Without revealing too much, I can say on pretty good authority, at least from here within Greece, is that the relationship that we're building is going to take some time. However, once it's all set in place, it's going to be immensely strategic. Nothing's going to really be able to bound from that. So the current deal that Greece made with Pakistan, we're talking about a few thousand workers in a naivety in hoping that Pakistan will stop sending thousands of illegal immigrants towards Europe. It is naivety, but the Greek government thinks that they're dealing with, added another layer to their fight against illegal immigration and human smugglers. In that sense, it does not affect Greek-Indian military ties, economic relations, and continued cross-cultural exchanges. In fact, they're only increasing as each month passes, thankfully. So in that sense, there's no threat of derailment in that sense. However, it's certainly not a good way in trying to consolidate a relatively new relationship in a modern era, at least.
Right. I'll take your word on that, Paul, and I'll inch towards my last question of this interview, and I just want to understand from you, a few thoughts about India. Lakhs of tourists every year, well, of course, before the pandemic, used to travel to Greece, and they love Greece. People here love Athens, and they love going to Mykonos, and so many beautiful islands out there. What are your thoughts in India? Any thoughts about Prime Minister Modi, and how do you perceive him as a leader? Because now he's become a very popular leader across the world.
It's quite interesting. As someone born in Australia and living in Greece now, there's not been many Indian leaders, besides, of course, the founding father Mahatma Gandhi, that is so known, at least across the wide public spectrum. I would argue that that India in the previous decades has really been confined in terms of foreign policy to its immediate neighborhood in South Asia, and of course within the context of having to deal with China, the USA, and Russia, China, the USA. And I feel like India's really broken out of its shell in the last few years and being far more engaging with East Asian countries, African countries, and now finally into Europe as well. Not only with Greece, but also with other far more important European countries in the grand scheme of things, such as France. So in this way, India is far more internationalized than what it was even just a few years ago. I, unfortunately, as I said, have not had the opportunity to go to India yet. That will be rectified soon enough. However, what I will say is that there's a huge love for Bollywood in Greece too. And Bollywood is such an amazing soft power tool that India should continue to utilize to project its international image and brand. So from my own perspective, I'll say that my favorite Bollywood movies would be Bashir Mastani and Padmava. Any sort of historical drama. So speak Bollywood to Greece. We'll have a pretty good knowledge of Bollywood movies, and that's something that Bollywood should be looking at more closely, really trying to penetrate into European markets with movies, because they're so well produced, they're so well received, and it really does foster a positive image of India, no matter the subject matter of the movie, just the professionalism of it. So they're my intentions for India. However, I'm more desperately to visit the areas of Rajasthan and Gujarat and these northwest areas. However, Bangalore and Kerala and South India is certainly on my agenda too, though.
All right, Paul, that was really, really nice of you. And, again, another thing we love about Greece is that, the people of Greece is so warm and so nice to talk to you. And it was a lovely discussion today. You answered all the pertinent questions. Of course, we're very happy that, our Prime Minister and the government of India extended that letter of friendship to you, and you received that letter. And we really hope that you come to India soon and we're able to strengthen our ties, you're able to see India, and you're able to eat our beautiful, you're able to eat Indian food and see Indian movies. I'm not sure about whether we can make many more historical movies, maybe some on Alexander or Horus, but let's hope for better. Let's hope for at least strong and defense ties and trade ties in the future as well. So thank you so much, Paul, for joining with us today.
It is. Thank you so much for having me.
Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste. Bye-bye.